Yes, I'm Kahana, and I'm basically telling you some stories or a story about the element of Morant Bay Square. Morant Bay Square, of course, most persons know it as the old courthouse. Now it's dubbed the Parboga Square. However, we would like to make mention that the courthouse, which actually commemorate Parboga in 1965, based on the anniversary of 1865 war. So now I'm just basically taking you on a small tour about the courthouse, what the courthouse actually, how it exists, what it's for, and that most individuals don't know that it's a courthouse plus Port Morant. Now you may see signs in the parish about Port Morant and never know that this is where Port Morant is. Fort Morant is, right? So you find out that when we talk about Fort Morant, as you see the roundabout, further down in the square there on the hill, you see Fort Morant, and everybody's asking, where's Fort Morant? Now, Fort Morant is right behind the old courthouse. If we actually look back, there was a statue here on the here in the area here, Paul Bogle, right? They call it the Paul Bogle statue, which at the time it wasn't really the Paul Bogle statue. It was Mr. Bagan who posed for that statue. So individuals from the parish found out that the statue wasn't really Paul Bogle, so they went through a petition that actually assist them in actually housing the statue, and it's still there. It's still at the Heritage Trust courtyard. They want to bring it back, but we want a statue that represents Paul Bogle, not Mr. Bagan. And we want the courthouse again to be refurbished as a museum. This is where the total history of Paul Bogle, George William Gordon, and Moses Bogle, right, took place. And we would like to keep that synergy going. The storyline is supposed to be consistent. We want to keep it going for years to come because we want our young people to know the sacrifice that was made for them when it came to actually education, land, and definitely freedom of movement. That's in the parish here. Now, as I said before, the young people, how are you all doing? How are you doing? Huh? You're okay? You're good? You had a good day? Did you know that this was the Paul Bogle Square?
Yes, sir.
Did you know also that behind there was called Fort Morant? Did you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Where is Fort Morant?
Huh?
Where is Fort Morant?
Sir?
Fort Morant.
Sir, somebody.
Where is Fort Morant? Do you know where Fort Morant is? You see, Fort Morant is not one of those places that neither the young person, the school person, or the elderly person know, because it has not been highlighted as Fort Morant. It's right behind the Morant Bay Courthouse. Now, Fort Morant, as you make entry through, this gate here, which is now controlled by the St. Thomas Municipal Corporation. It's a parking for people from the area here, garage. But Fort Morant is where you see those canyon. This is Fort Morant, the entrance to Fort Morant. And we know the cannons. We recognize them because most of us from the parish here know that the cannons are there. But they don't know that this place is called Fort Morant. So that's what I'm trying to emphasize here. When you get down to the roundabout or even on the hill coming up, you see the sign Fort Morant. Now, welcome to Fort Morant. Yes, welcome to the Morant Bay I would call it the fort, but it's actually Morant Bay. Yes, we have the courthouse, and then we have Fort Morant, right? So a lot of people don't even know that this site is called Fort Morant, based on the fact that this is a part of the whole construct of Morant Bay. And of course, if you know anything about the Morants, you would have known that the Morants had controlled the whole element of St. Thomas, this side of St. Thomas, from way back when. Those were based on the Spaniards who came here, the Morant family, before the Stokes took over the British came in 1865, took over the parish, and it became the British under the construct of the Britain or the British. Now, of course, the courthouse, which you find out that the courthouse actually was built by the British. So you find out that we have remnants of what is here, and this is was have been burnt down a number of times. So when you look at what it is now, it's a burnt out building, and anyone who know of the element of Paul Bogle know that this was the place where the trial of Paul Bogle happened. Paul Bogle, of course, along with the martyrs, they George William Garden, of course, and you find out that Moses Bogle, Paul Bogle, Miss Goegan, and the many stalwarts that made it possible in 1865, they were tried here, and since then, many things have happened over the years, because you find out that though they were tried here, as you can see, it's remnants of what it is, and though they were tried here, and you find out that they were hung in front of the courthouse. What you're looking at now is basically remnants of the old courthouse, and this was built by, yes, the British, who were the head persons who actually lead the construction of this. But the individuals who actually did the work were African people, right? You find out that elements of slavery is still planted here. And that's why you find out that in many cases, we want to restore this place as a museum for individuals who don't know about the Morant Bay Uprising, the construct of the Fort Morant, and we want to be able to do displays here when we welcome school children, individuals who want to know about why the courthouse is here, why it is not reconstructed, and what will happen with all of this if the cultural element plays part. Now, I know presently it is separated. One part is owned by the Heritage Trust, who runs the element of the heritage site, which the courthouse is a part of the heritage site. And you also find out that the parish council also have another domain there, because they were doing activities here under the British. Now, at that time, it was called not parish council, it was called a vestry, where you find out that the elements of the councillors who were called, the head of the vestry, they were the ones who actually call the shots for the parish. They were the ones who actually represent individuals from the parish. So you find out that, yes, George William Garden was one of the individuals who represented the planters in the parish, or the black people in the parish. And so he got caught up in the Morant Bay Uprising, or the Morant Bay War, as so to speak. And you find out that he got hung there. And of course, there were so many things that say he didn't have anything to do with the incident of the Morant Bay Rebellion, but he basically represented the black planters and the individuals who actually were considered downtrodden. They were the ones that Paul Bogle was fighting for in terms of education, right to own land, right to, just to be free, or to even have farms. So you find out that the powers that be didn't like what he was doing, so it turned into a war. But we want to be able now to restore this courthouse, to restore the idea of Fort Morant. As you can see, beautiful view. And the reason Port Morant, you find out that Port Morant down along the beach there, you find out that Fort Morant, not Port Morant. Sometimes the words don't come up, but it's Fort Morant. Right. And that's what it is, F-O-R-T. So you find out that, well, these cannons are still here. And I'm quite sure if the cannons are actually cleaned properly, they will be able to fire just like they were in the past.
So what were these cannons used for?
Of course, you know, the fort was along the shoreline. We're talking about the shipping port was along the shoreline. So these are defensive weapons for any invaders coming in from out at sea there. So you find out these now would target ships that was basically coming to invade. And just like many forts, you have this fort right here. You have Fort in Port Royal, that's another defensive area. You have areas in Kobe, that's a fort. You have Port Morant, that's a fort. You have Port Lindsay in Old Pier area. So all these forts were basically here to guard the British because they were built by the British to as a defensive element for wherever they actually, you know, predicated. That's where they call it their interest. They have to protect their interest. Their interest here was basically, you know, the Port Morant and the fort that was down the shipping area right down here. So the Fort Morant, as we say, is still an element of defensive. It's a defensive mechanism. Nobody is actually coming in to invade Morant Bay at the present moment, but we have it as a replica of history, what it was, and how we can teach young people to really glorify what is here. Not glorifying it in a sense that it is going to do them damage, but to let them understand that this port, the individuals who built this were black people. The individuals who actually have assisted in putting this up were their ancestors. The individuals who built the courthouse were their ancestors just the same, right? And we would call it that they were slaves because it was. This has been here before slavery was actually what do you call it there? Relegated. Slavery, yeah. And you find out that you know, we want to teach them. We want to be able to turn this into a museum so they can be able to get the full education of what took place here, what it represents, and that their ancestors, their foreparents were the builders of what you see here. Now, as you can see, we have the era here. This is Paul Bogle, right? As you can see where it is, it says in remembrance of Paul Bogle, George William Garden, and the 437 Jamaican martyrs of October 1865. So, well, because they loved freedom, right? And in gratitude from the generations now witness that they did not die in vain. So we want to let people know that they did not die in vain. So we actually celebrate them on in October, what we call Heroes Month, you know, and this was when it was placed here in 1965. However, we still look at it as era of remembrance. We want this era to, sometimes it gets a little not well managed, but we need it to come back on stream to where the tourism element can actually rebuild the building, reorganize the structure, that we can actually have the names of all the individuals who died to actually allow education and the element of freedom and the element of speech and all of that in the parish to be inside. Just look at it. Schools in general, based on the whole element of the Parbogle situation, you find out schools, because that was one of the things that he was advocating. So we want to be able to know on these walls here, we would like to get the individuals who are buried here. We want to get them as part of the representation for, we want to highlight them in the form that they won't be forgotten. We want their names on plaques on these walls. We want the courthouse, the old courthouse, to be rebuilt as a museum. We want it to be the right now it's supposed to be this main interest of the parish, the key interest of the parish, but it is not, because if you see how degrading it is presently, we want it to be rebuilt. And we recently, not too long ago, we did get some Jamaica National did donate some trees and some benches and things to spruce up around here, but it's not been kept well. As you see, hurricane came, broke down the fences, and it is not well kept around. The garbage need to be cleaned up. So we need another element of what this, we need to create another synergy to keep the place alive. We don't want this thing to go down as not being managed well. The people of St. Thomas need this. This reminds us, because a lot of us have ancestors who were literally buried here. We may not know unless we have the list with the names and we can trace back ancestry. A number of persons who are related to Paul Bogle are still in the parish, and among key persons who are here. You know, my good friend, Marcel Clark, who is one of the great grandson of Paul Bogle, right? Because Paul Bogle was a Clark. Also, the Clark came under his jurisdiction, the family. His daughter married to a Clark. So you find out that the Clark came down the line. So if you're going to look for a Bogle element of his lineage, it's going to be a Clark. It's also a Bogle, but it's actually Clark's. Mr. Bagan, who was the statue that most persons recognize on the front there, Mr. Bagan, he's the one that actually modeled for Paul Bogle, because when Edna Manley was doing this theme of Paul Bogle, and they were in 1968, when they were putting back all this together, they wanted a statue in front. So Mr. Bagan posed for the statue, and he kept telling his stories over the year that he was the one who actually posed for the statue. Now, this is 2025. Now we're going to celebrate presently the 150th year of the incident that happened here. Nobody is stepping up to the plate to say what they're going to do. Now, we don't even know what's going to happen. So I'm glad that someone is here to do this little interview, or to really highlight what's happening here. We would like on October 2025 for some events to happen here in this space. And I'm not just talking about mediocre events. We want something big to remind the people of Jamaica that Paul Bogle, this is where he started that second energy in terms of post-slavery to get Jamaica alive. And we want the recognition of the 150th years to be highlighted. We want people to be here to do this, to see what we want. Individuals who have information to come together as a group, that we can share information and commemorate the 1865 massacre that happened here, right? 150th anniversary. We want it to be a good one. Okay, we want you to know, notwithstanding all the events that we spoke about here, we also want you to know that this place is also served as a public facility. There's a bathroom here that actually, you know, take care of your bathroom needs, and it is controlled by individuals from Heritage Trust. This is the female side, and of course the male side is on the other end, right? The curator for the bathroom is not here presently, but this is what the bathroom is. So individuals from the street or wherever are welcome, right, to refresh at the bathroom. We still need it to be upgraded, but for what it is, we are working on it. And I hope that by 2025, all of this will be up and running like a well-oiled machine.